Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How you doing? It's Danny Tisdale, and you are, as you always are, when it's a podcast from Harlem World Magazine, listening to Danny Tisdale, me, and we are listening to the Danny Tisdale Show, and I'm here to host it. And, of course, with our great guest, as we always have, live here. And today we welcome another leader, legend, and trailblazer as we celebrate every day Harlem, the greatest community in the world. But today is special. We have a trailblazer, Dr. Mark Goulston, who, his conversation and his quotes caught me. March 27th, 2019, we posted an article, A Way to De-Escalate Destructive and Self-Destructive Behavior from Harlem to Hollywood. And, of course, it was talking about suicide. And from the 8th to the 15th of this month, and we're right on that starting day here, is National Suicide Prevention Week. And we especially want to talk about this because, as you may know or may not know, suicide is the second highest rate of death in the United States. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Dr. Mark Goulston, who is a psychiatrist who has specialized in suicide prevention for more than 25 years and more, and is the co-creator and moderator of the multi-award-winning documentary Stay Alive, an intimate conversation about suicide prevention. And it's available for free on YouTube and youtube.com/stayalivevideo. In that video, he interviews suicide survivors and CNN champion of change Kevin Hines, who survived jumping off the Golden State Bridge, and suicide prevention, and he's a suicide prevention advocate, and along with Japanese pop singer Reiko. Hopefully I've got the name correctly. Dr. Goulston is also host of Stay Alive podcast, where he speaks with people who have been touched by suicide. Dr. Goulston is the author of 7 books, including Just Listen, which for some is hard to do, which became the top book on listening in the world. Hello, Dr. Goulston. How are you?
I'm great, Danny. You know, as I was listening to you, I was also listening to our listeners, and something that I try to do is think of what are our listeners listening for, and let me see if this resonates with you, because if we get it right, we're going to really help some people, maybe save a few lives.
That's
if I'm
great.
listening in on this, and the show's about suicide and suicide prevention, what I'd be listening for is, why is it so epidemic? But also, right, I'd be listening for, if I'm a listener and I felt that way, how do I get through it the next time? Or if I'm a parent and I got a child and they don't want to talk to me, how do I get through to them? Because every time I want to talk to them, I heard this incredible insight from a friend of mine who, unfortunately, his name is Jason Reed, and his 14-year-old hung himself a year ago, and he's doing a documentary on that. And he told me, he said, when you ask someone how they're doing and they say great, it usually means they're doing good. But when you ask them and they say fine, they're not. And that's what you get from a lot of people. I'm fine. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then you find out not only weren't they fine, but something tragic happened. So I hope we can be of some service and some education in our time together.
Well, Doctor, do you in that situation, because I'm by nature a curious person, and when someone, after what you just said, and someone says that they're fine, should you go any further, or what do you do?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because in the documentary Stay Alive, in one of the episodes, one of the scenes, I speak to Kevin Hines, who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
And there's an intervention we've developed called the 7 words.
Right.
And it goes like this. So your teenager, your spouse, your friend doesn't want to talk to you. You know they need to talk to someone, but they don't want to talk to you. And so there's your teenager, and you say, you seem kind of in a bad, I'm fine. Just get off my back. Leave me alone. And so you let them say that. See, what most parents would say is, okay, but if you want to talk about it, you might feel better. And they say, I told you I'm fine. So let them vent. Pause for a few seconds and say, yeah, I know you don't want to talk about it, but 7 words. And they're going to say what, and they may say some other choice language on the end of what. But you got their attention because they're thinking, I just told you I don't want to talk about it. You can say, yeah, I know you don't want to talk about it, but 7 words, and they go, what? Because they're curious. And then you say these 7 words in an FM radio voice or an NPR voice. So it's not like telling the news. It's giving them words that they can feel. And you say it this way, which is what I did with Kevin Hines. I said, 7 words: anxious, depressed, angry, ashamed, alone, lonely, tired. And whenever I've done that with depressed people, and I say pick one, and when I did it with Kevin Hines, he did what a lot of people have done with me over the years. He cocked his head, smiled, and he said, all of them. But then you're in. And you say, well, pick the worst, the one you felt worst at 3 a.m, and you just couldn't go back to bed. Angry. Good. Take me back there. Tell me about that moment. And what time was it? And here's the interesting thing. When you get people talking about a time where they were really at the end of their rope, they felt it all alone. But when they describe it to you and you can see it with your eyes, they re-feel it. So if they say, I was angry, it was 3 a.m. last Tuesday, you could say, tell me about 3 a.m. last Tuesday. Were you in bed? Were you walking around your apartment? What were you doing? Were you hitting pillows? Were you clenching fists? And so as they describe it so clearly that you as the listener can see it, they feel it. But they're not alone when they're telling you. And often what happens is they start to cry because they're not alone. And as they start to cry, don't get upset. You didn't make them feel worse. You let them get things off their chest. It is like draining an abscess of hopelessness in the dark night of the soul. It's exactly like that. And then when they start to cry, they start to feel better. Now, initially, it's going to be real awkward. Oh, my God, I made them cry. Oh, it's going to be okay. So, re-listen to this broadcast or look up, some of the stuff that we've talked about. You can look up 7 words, interventional empathy. That's what it is. Goulston, you'll find a bunch of stuff on it.
And we're posting this on we have it posted on the website in the article that I mentioned earlier. But, we have more suicide awareness than ever, yet the rates of suicide is almost, as you look at all the demographics, is increasing. How do we get here?
Well, I think what's causing the increase, especially in youth, and there's a difference slightly between male youth and female youth. It's interesting, in anticipation of this show, I have if you go to my Twitter page, @MarkGoulston, I have a permanently pinned tweet about people touched by suicide. Today it hit 2.5 million impressions and 1,500 comments. And I said, what do you think is the last straw? If there's one thing, and
great question.
What most people posted was hopelessness and helplessness. So hopelessness means you don't see a future. You don't see a way of getting into the future. Or if there is one, you don't feel there's any way to get there. You just feel helpless. And so when those things keep going in your head, it's hopeless, I'm helpless to get there. And throw in for men, I'm useless and I'm worthless. And I'm just a burden. Then it crosses over into pointless. And I think and if you've read my articles, I write about despair is something that the all suicidal people feel at the end. And if you break the word despair into DESPAIR, 2 words, it's feeling unpaired with reasons to live. We mentioned some of them: hopeless, useless, worthless, meaningless, pointless. And you pair with death to make the pain go away. And I think I was effective with people for 20 years, and now I'm training people. I've retired as a practicing doctor, so I don't do it one-on-one, because I found a way to pair with people in their hopelessness and the dark night of the soul. And part of the ways I did it was by using the 7 words, and instead of throwing treatments and solutions at them, which they weren't going to follow through on because they just feel stuck and locked. Right. Instead, in a sense, I was saying, you're worth being side by side in the worst of your pain. And what I used to say to people who had tried everything, and so I wasn't going to throw things at them, is, if it's okay with you, I'm going to try and find you where you are and keep you company. That's all we're going to do.
And you do that by conversation, by talking to them.
And by drawing things out of them. So, again, those seven words, and it's different. See, when you give people the 7 words, anxious, depressed, angry, ashamed, alone, lonely, tired, when you give them the words, they're going to feel them. If you do it like check the boxes, you're putting a barrier between you. If you say, have you ever felt depressed? They're going to look at you like you're an idiot. What do you think I am, happy? But when you give them the words and invite them to resonate with any of them, they're going to lean into them, and that begins the connection.
Amazing, and of course, hearing it is maybe, of course, is not the right word. It's not surprising, but yet it is. And for me, even more surprising is that the suicide rate in the African American community, of course, we're right here in Harlem, especially among youth, which has previously been low, is also on the rise. And I found a few statistics, and this is from JAMA Pediatrics. Black children between the ages of 5 to 12 years of age are roughly twice as likely to take their own life than their white counterparts. And also, this is from Quartz, QUARTZ, from 2001 to 2015, the overall suicide rate was approximately 42% lower among black youths ages 17 and under than among white youths. It sounds like there's similarities and differences. What makes it different and what makes it similar for white kids versus black kids?
Well, I'm going to say something, and I'd like you to see if I'm way out on a limb.
Okay.
And I think there's been a breakdown in a lot of families, and in the African American community, a lot of times there's not really a connection with a dad. And I think what's happened is the moms have become overwhelmed, and they've become project managers. Get in the car, do your homework. You didn't do your homework? Come on, get dressed. And I think years ago, before there was a breakdown, and this is also true in the white community, but what happens is when moms feel overwhelmed, and I've seen moms over the years when I was practicing, and a number of moms who were working moms because they had to support their family, I drilled down, well, what's really going on? What's really going on? And a number of moms, and this could be African American or white, would say, I can't find my warmth. I said, what do you mean? I can't find my warmth because I got to manage everything, and I'm not getting any cooperation. I get pushback, and the best part of me is my warmth, and I can't find it because everyone's fighting me. And see, a lot of my work in reaching suicidal people, I don't know if they would call it warmth, but they felt by me, which is different than my figuring them out, giving them medication, which they wouldn't take, and getting them out of my office so they could just do themselves in. So I think there's been and to be honest, to bring in social media and all this sort of stuff, I think what's happened is
certainly doesn't help.
The internet has addicted us, and especially youth, to adrenaline. and I gave a presentation at Hollywood High School on mental health. I was on a panel, and I said, there's 4 emotions that you live with, and these were teenagers, and I said, excitement, boredom, fear, and anger. That's all you know. Excitement, boredom, fear, and anger. And I did an exercise with the 40 high schoolers, and I said, try on these 7 words. Just try them on. And one by one, they each picked one of the words. And I said, how did that feel? They said, that felt great. I said, what was great about it? Oh, I didn't feel alone. I felt relief. Right. Did you think less of anyone? Heck no. And then I said, I know we got to go to a break. I said, here's your challenge. Write down those words. You have a friend you're worried about. Get them talking about those things. And let's see if we can bring in something else besides excitement, boredom, fear, and anger.
Right. Other ways of igniting the conversation that helps continue the conversation, it sounds like. And Doctor, I would definitely agree with you. And I'm just talking from my own experience, moving from one community to another community, from the city to the suburbs, was a challenge in itself. But then as my parents divorced and Mom, being by herself, it doubled the challenge, and certainly always she was always as warm as could be. But of course, working a full-time job, working overtime, and doing
and you didn't
all
want to
the
burden
things
her.
that had to happen as a mom, it's a challenge.
And you didn't want to burden her because
Certainly
you saw
not.
how tough it was. And so when you start to feel that our feelings are going to be a burden, you keep them to yourself. And when you're a kid and you keep them to yourself, it's like a cancer in your spirit.
Mm-hmm. Eating at you.
Totally.
Yeah. And, Doctor, I'm not going to go into our commercial, and I'm sure sponsors will have issues with that, and I'll make it up to them. But you've written and spoken extensively about the suicidal mind. Let me just at least do a station ID, and then I'll come right back to this question and let our listeners know they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show podcast, and it's on Harlem World Radio, and want to get that station ID as we get right back to this conversation. I think the conversation is more important than some other things I could talk about during our station ID. But you've written and spoken extensively about the suicidal mind. What is different about the suicidal mind than the non-suicidal mind?
Well, I think what happens is the suicidal mind attaches to things that they hope will, make them feel better. And then when it doesn't happen, when your expectations don't turn out, it's tough to deal with it. So I'll tell you, because there's a part of me, I've kind of flirted with depression a lot of my life. It's in the genes, and it's probably helped me be empathic a little bit. And here's my formula, which has helped me deal with depression, things like that. I have high hope. I'm an optimist. I have high hopes for things, but I have zero expectations that anything will ever work out. Because if I have an expectation that something's going to work out and I get too attached to it, then when it doesn't work out and I'm too attached to it, I can plummet. And so I have high hopes, and it's interesting.
Gotcha. Right.
In the business world, people will say, well, you don't sound very enthusiastic. We're going to do something. I said, I have high hopes, but I have zero expectations it'll work out. They said, well, that's pretty negative. I say, look, when the check clears after it's deposited, and when in 3 months we don't all go belly up, you're going to see me smiling.
But until then,
there
will be hopes.
Yeah, that's right. Does that make sense?
Is there? Oh, it certainly does, and I get that, because I'm an optimist also, and I've always been one, and as I get older, I continue to be one, and sometimes even more optimistic. So is that how we manage ourselves is that we, have high hopes, but we kind of remain realistic, I guess is another way of putting it.
Well, I think that's the best way. I'll tell you something. I've been working a lot with inner city youth, and I tell them that before I see them, watch a video of Steph Curry playing for the Warriors, especially when something goes wrong. And then when we meet, let's talk about it. And then I say to them, "What did you notice?"
What Steph Curry?
Well, he really handled it. Steph Curry, he really handled it. I said, "Yeah, I mean, Kevin Durant's like a robot, and LeBron James is like a superhuman, but Steph Curry, I mean, he looks like a regular person." And I said, Steph Curry's a good model for how do you take the hit in life without making things worse. So the key is, and this is what I try to train people, especially youth, that every time something doesn't go right, that's your opportunity to build Steph Curry muscle. And so when something doesn't go right, you say to yourself, opportunity to build that muscle, take the hit. And what take the hit means is you don't have to be happy about it, but we've actually developed a tool, and I'm on the board of advisors for Dr. Oz's foundation, Health Corps, where we go into inner city high schools and teach mental resilience. And the tool, which I'm calling the Steph Curry Take the Hit tool, is that when something bad happens, don't deny it. You can be angry about it, but imagine your mom or your dad or someone who believes in you says to you these steps. What just happened? Oh, such and such happened, blah, 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 blah. That's step one. Step two. Well, what'd you think and feel when that happened? Oh, I felt blah, blah, blah. This is awful. This is awful. It always happens to me. Third step, what does it make you want to do? And that's the most important thing. Imagine they're talking you through, and then your impulse is to give up. I'm going to quit, whatever. And then imagine that mom or dad is smiling at you, believing in you, and saying, "Okay, honey, take a breath. What would be a better thing to do?" So and I believe, from what I know about Steph Curry, that's exactly why he can take the hit, because he's internalized the love and encouragement of his parents, and you can see that whenever they're at the games. And so, and you can pick a hero. You can pick a hero. You can pick a hero, and you can imagine you have a Steph Curry or whoever your hero is, and imagine that they're talking to you, and they believe in you. Something bad happened, and then they say, "You can get through this. Take the hit." And then they walk you through it.
Well, is that because that made me think of another saying that's different but similar in a way, which is let it roll off your shoulders, or be like water. Is that similar, different, or we're talking about something completely opposite of each other?
No, that's the final thing. But I think initially when something jars you, so for instance, something else I discovered that's actually helped me is when something happens or someone disappoints me, I say to myself, here's another internal sort of tip. I say to myself, I hate the way this feels. Because then I don't have to do anything about it. Whereas if I say, I hate that person for that, or I hate when this happens, then it gets you triggered up and you got to retaliate. Well, I'm going to get even with them, or I'm going to show them. But if you can just say to yourself, I hate the way this feels, and really what it is, I hate the way it feels when I was having an expectation and it didn't work out, and wham,
didn't happen the way I thought it would.
Absolutely.
So the thing is that after you've kind of absorbed it and realized that, okay, I don't like this, I don't like the way it happened, the next step is kind of stand up and dust yourself off and keep marching towards your goal?
Yeah, well, if you go through the tools that I mentioned, what's a good thing is to say, to let it out verbally. You know, they teach kids in preschool, use your words. You know, don't hit the kid next to you. And I think it's a good thing to say, okay, I understand you feel that way, so what does it make you feel like doing? And so you use your words. Well, I feel like quitting school. I feel like running away. Right. Yeah. So you let them verbalize it, and then you say to them, or you say to yourself inside, using, you know, your internal mom or dad or whoever loves you, and imagine they're smiling at you. Okay, take a deep breath. Okay, yeah, I know you want to do that. What would be a better thing to do? And really what you want to teach them, the better thing to do is to have these conversations in our head with people who love us, living or dead. I have 7 mentors. They've all died, and I have the Dead Mentor Society, and they talk me down from DEFCON 1 to DEFCON 4. Like, I used to be very critical of myself in these interviews, and I'd say, oh, geez, I can't believe I get off on tangents, and I tell these stories, and I can't get back to what I'm talking about. And so I'll call one of my dead mentors, and we have this lovely conversation. And I say, and I'll call one, a guy named Warren Bennis, big leadership guy. And he says, what is it, Mark? You awakened me. I said, I did it again. Oh, I got in 9 directions. Can I ever finish a story? And then he'll say, well, how did Danny feel? I think he liked it. I think he liked it because he was willing to take the hit from his, from the advertisers, from the station, so we could have the thing. And so what Warren says to me then, lovingly, he says, Mark, you're real. You know, you're not canned. So do me a favor, Mark, put a sock in it. Can I feel better? I feel better. Okay, sounds Warren, like I miss you. I miss you, Warren. Yeah. But can you see how that would work? If you can, you can pull on that thing internally, and you let them talk you through it, and I have a little tantrum in my head, and it's okay. You know, I'm not acting on it.
Right. You can wipe it off, dust yourself off. What I used to say, dust yourself off, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and keep it going. You know, absolutely. Doctor, I knew this was going to happen. We are, at the situation where we have 3 minutes left. I just knew that was going to happen. And, of course, I have many more questions for you, but I'm going to ask you 2 questions at one and see if we can do it in 2 minutes. What is your favorite place when you're in Harlem? And last but not least, please give our listeners your contact information so they can follow you on Twitter, your website, and stay in contact and hear your great advice and wisdom.
Cecil's Steakhouse. Ever been there?
Oh, no. Oh, I love that place.
Oh, yeah. It's family owned. I mean, it is the best. Yeah. It is the best.
That's right.
So, Cecil's, if you're listening, I'll do an ad for you anytime.
You just made me lick my lips, too, so that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Thanks.
And how can our listeners, Dr. stay in contact with you and follow you and subscribe, buy your book, and just contact with you so that they can live a great life?
I think if you go to my Twitter page, I have 550,000 followers. So that's at Mark Goulston, right. MarkGoulston. And again, please share the top tweet, which is this Touched by Suicide community. It is saving lives. It'll chill you because people are just listing all the people they know who died by suicide. So I think if you go there, and then I have a website, Mark Goulston, MarkGoulston.com. But be sure to go see the Stay Alive video, an intimate conversation about suicide prevention. And you're right, it's at youtube.com/stayalivevideo. And reach out to us and use those 7 words and reach out to people you're worried about.
Doctor, I really, really appreciate you being on the show. And it seems like we've been planning this show since the 40s. And you've hung in there, and here you are. We're having this conversation. We had this conversation, and I do hope that we have changed some lives, or that we at least make people think. And during this Suicide Prevention Week from today to September 15th. And again, Doctor, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Danny. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, folks, as I mentioned, it is Suicide Prevention Week. Please reach out to those who may need your help. If you know someone that needs some help, call 311 or call Harlem Hospital and see if they can help you. Bye-bye. Thank you.